Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Money Master HQ podcast show. And today we've got an incredible guest with us, and we're going to discuss a very important and a useful topic, and that's about productivity. And who doesn't want to be more productive these days? I mean, there's tons going on in the world, in our own economies, in our own households, and so on. So, yes, this is a very important and a very timely topic that we want to discuss. And the guest is none other than Mark Struczewski. Mark, thank you very much for joining in. How are you doing
I
today?
thought I was on the wrong show. You said incredible guest, so I guess it's me, right?
Absolutely. You're in the right place, Mark.
Okay.
So, how are things and where are you based in? Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Houston, Texas, in the United States of America. And I was telling you before we started recording that I've had so many people tell me, you got to get to Dubai. You got to get to Dubai. So it is on my, I don't like to say bucket list because kick the bucket. I like putting it on my life goals list. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Dubai. So I got to come visit some point.
It'll be great to meet you in person. So, yeah, can't wait to see you. All right, so let's get started, Mark. Would you like to describe your story? How did you get to where you are today?
Well, the I used to tell people it started when I was fired from my corporate job back in July 2005, and I made the decision to become a solopreneur instead of going back to the corporate world. But the more I reflected on that, because almost every host asked me that question, I go back to my childhood because I'm an only child, and my late parents raised me very structured. So I had chores to be done, and they had to be done on time, and they had to be done correctly. No shortcuts. Mom and dad did not allow any shortcuts. And I think because that's the way I was raised, I was what's known as a a latchkey kid, which means I would have a key to my home and I would come home from school. I'd be home before my parents would. And before they came home, homework better be done, chores better be done before I went outside and played. Now, I wish I could tell your audience that it always happened, but there'd be a couple times that I went out and played sports with my friends and came home and my parents were not pleased because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I think that was the foundation of me becoming Mr. Productivity I am today.
Thanks. That's a very interesting story. So, you were taught to be made independent from a very young age, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, yes, I know you as a kid, you did happen to not do things that you were supposed to do. But we as adults, I mean, we know what's important in our lives and we still don't do it. I mean, for example, health, we know health is wealth. But how many of us do take it seriously? How many of us do have a morning routine? So, what's your advice on that, Mark?
Well, I'm 59 years young, and when people look at me, they they say, there's no way you're 59. Now, part of the reason why is I cheat. I shave all the gray off every day, my hair, my head, my goatee, everything. But the other thing is I take care of myself as a high priority. So I've been running at least 1 mile every day since August 29th, 2017. So over 7 years. I'm always lifting weights. I do 15,000 steps every day. I do push ups. I do squatting to keep my hip flexors in order. I'm constantly active. I try not to sit too often. Normally, for this interview, I'd be doing it behind my stand up desk, but my stand up desk isn't working. So I've got to sit, unfortunately. But I think if you make a priority of taking care of yourself, you will understand why healthy people are productive people. So I don't want to hear excuses. I got kids. I got my in laws living at home. Don't make excuses. I have the same 24 hours as you do. You can make it work if you truly want to.
What would be some simple steps for someone who is actually overwhelmed, who is going through procrastination? I mean, we hear these terms a lot nowadays. I mean, not everyone actually is overwhelmed, to be honest, but they use it a lot. And I think probably that gets into their head and in the way of, a lot of things that they actually want to do. So for someone who wants to approach life in a very simplistic way and start transforming their lives, what would your advice be?
Start with one. So when people ask me what my morning routine is, I see this overwhelm wash over their face. I'm like, no, no, no. Start with one thing. What is one simple thing you can do to begin to get out from under overwhelm? So a lot of people want to say, I'm going to do 14 things. No, I'm going to do 5 things. No, start with one thing that's going to begin the process, because I think people are trying to do too much. And so they're already overwhelmed to begin with. And now they try to do these 12 new things. Well, what do you think the odds of you being successful of implementing this new routine, whatever the routine is for you? So there's power in the number one, and everyone can figure out what that one thing is in order to make their life better. I can't give people on this show that thing because I don't know they're living the situation. I don't know if they're a night owl or a morning person or whatever, but I just want them to reflect on what is one thing I could do starting today that's going to get me out from the power of overwhelm.
That's useful and interesting. So you did mention about, being a night owl versus a morning person. So, would it be different in how a person would approach their day? And in terms of, some different people have got different peak hours during a day, right? So would anything be different from a productivity perspective and how they should approach their day, Mark, to get the best?
No, it depends on what you need to get done. So I'm a morning person. I'm up between 4:30 and 5 o'clock every morning. But if you go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, you get up at 1 o'clock, the principles are still the same. You're just starting at 1 o'clock where I'm starting at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So there's no difference. You got to figure out what is the best time for you. And for everybody, it's different. So if you're not a morning person, I used to be a night owl. And then I read a book by Robin Sharma called The 5 a.m. Club, and I decided to try it. And now I am in love with getting up early. But that is not a requirement to being productive. You can be productive at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You could be productive at 2 o'clock in the morning. Find when your peak time is and go all in on that time.
Great. Now, we've got a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs on this show and, listening into this show basically. And they go through a lot during a day. I mean, as business owners, entrepreneurs, they're expected to run their business, but more often than not, they get caught in the daily operational stuff of their business. So I've heard this famous quote from Danny Iney, who says the most important thing is to make the important thing the important thing. So if you don't make, prioritize the important things, other things will get prioritized and you lose focus and you don't achieve your goals. So what could be a good way for a business owner to, approach their day basically?
Well, one of the key components I've been talking a lot lately is you have to disconnect from the busyness of your day. And this could be as simple as what I call taking a micro break. Micro break is 3 to 5 minutes. So maybe you have 5 minutes between Zoom call meetings or meetings if you're in the corporate world. Just go outside. Don't get on your phone. Don't talk to anyone. So if you go outside your building, there's a whole bunch of people around there. Maybe you go around the side or something like that and just be quiet. Just be present. Maybe close your eyes and do some deep breathing or something like that. Give your body and your brain a chance to just take a deep breath and just relax. Because what most people do, they go from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and their brain is constantly processing. Where if you just gift yourself these 3 to 5 minute breaks, it's going to fundamentally change your productivity. And if you want to take it to the next level, if you work from home like I do, go outside, take your shoes and socks off, and just stand there in your bare feet. It's called grounding or earthing. And just like I said, just be quiet, just be present, because we're always going, 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 but our brains want us to stop every once in a while. I encourage people, no matter what you're doing, every hour, get up and walk around for 2 to 3 minutes. If you're on a call, turn off your phone or whatever, or turn off your camera rather, but don't just be going all the time. We are not designed, we were never created to constantly moving. We are created to work and take a break, work and take a break. And if people just do that small thing, they will be surprised at how much more energy they have And when you have energy, you can be productive.
Thanks, Mark. You explained that very well. Now, I read a book called The Atomic Habits, and I found it very useful. Where simple habits on a daily basis can be on autopilot, and you don't even realize you do them on a daily basis. So, how important are habits in being productive as a human?
Habits are critical because habits allow you to go on autopilot. See, I just mentioned that our brains are constantly working. And if we have these automatic habits we can do and go on autopilot, it's going to free up the bandwidth from our brain. So, like you mentioned, we already do a lot of things. Unfortunately, most of us have negative habits. But if you can figure out a way to automatize most of your life, it's going to free your brain to work on the things it needs to work on. And for example, like when I wake up, the first thing I do after I use the restroom is I take my daily supplements. First thing. Then I take my blood glucose. Then immediately I do a single push up and I go right into a hip flexor exercise by squatting. Boom, 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 right away. So that is so ingrained. I'm on autopilot. Oh, one thing I left out is I'm bald. So I shave my head every morning. So as I'm on the toilet, not on the toilet, using the toilet, I'm shaving my head. Why not? I mean, what else am I going to do? Right. So I'm shaving my head with my shaver. I don't use, shaving cream and a razor blade. I have this electric shaver. But this is stuff that's so automatic for me. I don't have to think about it. So I know my routine is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I don't have to go, okay, what happens after A? I know what it is because it's so automatic for me. Now, it wasn't automatic in the beginning. You don't create a habit and start using the habit. You got to start practicing it. The more you practice it, then you go from manual habits to automatic habits. And then your brain doesn't have to think about it, it just does it.
Thanks, Mark. Now, as a busy professional, I mean, I see this a lot in offices in the corporate world where, every task seems so important. There's some information required by the management. You need to complete certain other tasks. As a finance person, there are payments to be approved. There are certain reports to be generated, so on and so forth. And everything is urgent. So, in such a world, how would you actually go about prioritizing tasks? And yeah, how would you answer that, Mark?
Well, if you're in the corporate world and you feel that your bandwidth is maxed out, you need to go to your leader and say, okay, listen, all these tasks I have to do, they're all urgent, but I can't get them all done. My bandwidth is full. And let the leader prioritize for you. If you're a business owner or you're a solopreneur, as I am, then you sit back and go, okay, what is truly important? And it's a lot easier when you're a solopreneur than it is if you're working for someone else. But you've got to prioritize because you can only do one thing at a time. And if you're trying to stuff 20 pounds of potatoes in a 10-pound bag, it's not going to work. And so people need to get really good at prioritizing. So again, if you work for somebody, go to them, explain your issue professionally and ask them for their advice, for their prioritization. If you work for yourself, sit down and list all your tasks and start assigning the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you can only work on one task at a time. So you're going to have to pick one. Well, they're all important. Okay. But again, you can't do 5 tasks at a time. So you're going to have to prioritize. What is the most important task? What is the second most important task? Identify 3 to 4 tasks. So when you finish with the first one, boom, you go to the second one without having to think about it again.
Now, let's talk about time management. You did mention right at the beginning that it's one thing that's equal for everyone, whether you're Elon Musk or Warren Buffett, or whether it's you or me, it's 24 hours in a day. That's it. And how we utilize this 24 hours is, what becomes us end of the day and in terms of how far we go in life. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see, Mark, when it comes to time management?
People don't know how long something takes them. So they think, oh, this is going to take 10 minutes and actually takes them 2 hours. I had a client a couple years ago and they were a big writer. They wrote some kind of proposals or something like that. And they weren't scheduling their time. But once I got them in the habit of scheduling their time, they came back to me and says, it's not working. I'm like, well, that's weird. Why is it not working? Well, I'm running out of time. I'm like, oh, we have a problem. Okay, so how long does it take you to do this proposal? Oh, it takes me 2 hours. How long are you scheduling? An hour. Okay, now we have the problem. She didn't allocate enough time to do the task. So, what I tell people is you got to figure out how long something's really going to take you, not what you tell yourself, not what your boss may say or what the internet says. How long does it take you to do the task? And you might have to time it if it's the same task you're doing every day or every week. You might have to time yourself. Okay, 30 minutes, now 45 minutes, now it takes 50 minutes, now it takes 25 minutes. You average it, then add maybe 20% on it, and then you carve that time out. That's the biggest problem. People are throwing spaghetti against the wall and guessing. Don't guess, especially if you're doing these tasks on a regular basis. You know how long it's taking you. So if it's taking you 45 minutes, don't schedule 30 minutes for it. It's taking you 90 minutes, don't schedule an hour. See where I'm going here?
Absolutely, Mark. Now, Stephen Covey did mention the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Do you agree with this?
Oh, 100%. Because let's say you have 10 things you have to get done today. The first 9 are going to take you 5 minutes or less total. And the 10th thing, which is the thing you really should work on, is going to take you 5 hours. But you knock off the real easy ones first. So at the end of the day, you got 9 out of 10. You're like, man, I was really productive today. But in reality, you only worked on those things, took you 5 minutes to do, and you didn't do the big thing. So what you need to do is reverse engineer it. What is the most important thing I need to do today? Then you put it on your calendar first. Even though the other things only take you 5 minutes, you need to work on this big thing. And so a lot of people struggle with this. They put the really easy stuff, or they do the really easy stuff. And then they get to the end of the day and like, well, I got a lot done, but I didn't get the right things done.
So that's the busy versus being productive argument, I guess.
Yeah, listen, you can be busy being productive, but just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive. Let me say that again for your listeners. You can be busy being productive, but just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive. That's something you need to think about for a few minutes, but then you'll get it. So the hamster is really busy running on that wheel, but it's not going anywhere. So think about it in those terms.
Thanks, Mark. Now, being productive, is it something that someone can be coached on, or is it something
Oh,
that comes naturally?
oh, 100%. To me, I'm not naturally gifted to be productive. My parents raised me. I was not aware I'd be Mr. Productivity when I was 6 or 7 years old, but everyone needs to be taught. No one is born a salesperson. No one is born a professional speaker. You learn those skills. Now, certain people take to things more easily than other people do. Okay. But everyone can be taught if you are coachable, if you have the desire to learn. Now, if you have an attitude like, I got it all figured out, well, you're probably not listening to this podcast anyways. But if you have a spirit of like, I can learn new things, yes, you can learn to be productive.
And how do you help clients to be productive? What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, the first thing I do is I talk to them on a call because everyone's unique. We all have unique fingerprints. And so I don't do boilerplate coaching like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I don't do that because we're all going to be in different seasons of our lives. We're all dealing with different issues. So I have never coached 2 people the exact same way because they all have different issues. And so the first thing I have to do is I have to figure out, where are you now and where do you want to go? And then once I know that, then I can create a map to go from point A, where you are now, to point B, where you want to go.
So is it more like a long-term coaching plan that you offer them and then have one-on-one calls with your clients, or how is it structured?
That depends because, and I'll tell you why it depends. Some people get it in like a month. Some people need 6 months. Some people want one-on-one. Some people say, look, I want a couple coaching sessions at the beginning, but then I really want to have access to you via WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram for quick questions. So I customize a package for the person based on their needs. So everybody has a different program. So some coaches, they say, hey, I do 2 1-hour coaching sessions for 6 months. That's it. No email access, no text messaging. That doesn't resonate with me. I want to listen to what my clients need, and everyone's going to be different. Some people go, well, isn't that a lot of work? I said, well, no, I don't have thousands of clients. I don't want 1,000 clients because I could not help 1,000 people effectively. So I have fewer clients, and I allow them after our conversation to custom design what will work best for them. So some people want 60-minute calls. Some people only want 15-minute check-in calls. So I'm like, I'll build a plan for you. It's not that hard. Now, if I was trying to build my business based on volume, yeah, that would be a headache. But I'm not trying to build it on volume. I'm looking for a very specific group of people. And if you don't fall in that specific group of people, you're not going to be on a call with me because you right away, you're like, well, like, let's say I speak English, but let's say you speak Farsi. Well, if you don't read English and you go to my website, you're like, I don't understand this because I'm not speaking your language. So that's how it all starts.
So basically, it's a completely customized solution that you offer to your clients based on
Yes.
their needs, based on where they are, and then you identify where they want to go, and you identify that gap, and then provide a solution. That's
Yes,
great.
because one of the things and this is something I just recently earned from a coach I invested in, and it's all about the outcome. It doesn't matter how we get to where we want to go. So let's say I want to fly from Houston to Dubai. I don't need to know what kind of plane it is. I don't care what kind of food they serve on the plane, who the pilot is. Can you get me from Houston to Dubai? That's what I care about. And when I realized that, when my coach told me that, I'm like, wow, that's very profound because a lot of people, they come up with a program that could be a community, a course, it doesn't matter. And then you go out and say, hey, I'm going to force people into this program. And people are like, well, I don't want that. I want to be coached, but not by that way. So I decided I'm going to listen to what people tell me. Now, most people don't know what they want. And then I start with the one-on-one coaching. Most people don't have a clue, and that's okay. If you don't understand, it's okay. But I want people to understand I'm willing to work with you. So I may take my base model and you're like, okay, well, that gets me 80% there, but I also want this stuff. Okay, well, we'll create a plan for you. I believe flexibility is something that is going to become more prevalent as we move forward.
Incredible. Mark, when it comes to productivity, what are some of the best books that you've read? And for someone who's interested to learn this area more, to be more productive, to be more efficient, what are some of the books that you'll, feel are good to read, good to be read, basically?
Well, I don't have a book. People have been telling me I should write a book, but I'm not there yet. So one of my favorite books is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. That book is so magical because the way Robin writes, he tells a story, and in the story, he tells lessons. And so I've read this book 3 times already because it's such a powerful book. And you don't have to commit to being a 5 a.m.er to get value out of the book. But I encourage people to try it. If you've never tried it, try it. So there's definitely that. Some other books I've read that I really enjoy. Of course, you already mentioned Atomic Habits. There's BJ Fogg's Tiny Habit. That's another book. I have so many books I've read, and I'm an avid reader. I read non-negotiable 1 hour a day. And I don't want people just to think about productivity books or habits books. Think about health and wellness. Okay. So I'm reading a book right now called Good Energy by Casey Means. It's all about taking care of yourself. Healthy people are productive people. Happy people are productive people. So maybe you need to read some books on how to be more happy or happier because it's productivity is not just about getting things done. It's about how do you feel emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. It all matters.
Thanks for sharing those useful books that you've read, Mark. So, just out of curiosity, for how long have you been practicing this 1 hour per day reading habit? And I'm sure it must have been very useful.
I have been reading 1 hour a day. Oh my goodness. For a couple years now,
Okay.
because I kept hearing from thought leaders who are where I want to be in the world. And they say, non-negotiable, read, 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 read. Not tweets, not posts, not blog posts, reading books. And so I have a Kindle. I love my Kindle mainly because if I want a book, I can get it instantly. I don't have to wait for Amazon to ship it to me. But when I go to bed at night, I actually lie down on my bed. I have my Kindle in dark mode, and I'm reading until I fall asleep. But I have physical books too. Reading is, I think, is the best return on investment you can have, because imagine Atomic Habits, James Clear. Imagine how much James Clear would charge you if you got on a Zoom call with him and he read his book to you. It would be a lot more than $20 the book costs, right? Would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely.
And so I think books have the best return on investment. But Mark, I can't afford books. I can barely afford to pay my rent. Libraries. Do your friends have a copy of the book you can borrow? So no excuses here. You need to read, and you pick an industry you want to get better at: productivity, money management, organic farming, travel. Go out and buy books and read the books. And I promise you, books will never let you down.
Yes, I've been experiencing the same as well, Mark. I mean, from my own personal experience, I can say that the investment in books is definitely worth the investment. Uh, just a few final questions before we wrap up. Now, we live in a day and age where, digital distractions take place throughout our day. I mean, we hear these bings and tings and all of these on our phones, on our laptops, on our machines. And we've got tons of them as well. We've got an iPad, we've got a laptop, we've got not one phone, sometimes several phones, and multiple digital equipment within our households, within our offices. So, how do we stay away from these digital distractions and stay focused?
I'm imagining that your audience is adults. Is that a fair assessment?
That's 100% right. Yeah.
It's about discipline. My phone does not control me. I control my phone. So I'm not scrolling on social media. I'm fully focused here. So when people say I'm addicted to my phone, I'm like, well, whose fault is that? Oh, it's Apple's fault. It's Android's fault. It's Facebook's fault. No. Is someone putting a gun to your head and forcing you to use these devices or these apps? No. So, I mean, people say turn off notifications, put in airplane mode, turn it off, lock in the drawer. Those are all gimmicks. You need to grow up. This is a little tough love for your audience. You need to grow up and say, I am not going to pick up my phone. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm going to go outside for a walk and not have my phone with me. And so I tell people, I used to be gentle about it. I'm like, well, here's some gimmicks. No, just grow up, be disciplined. Because if you think your phone controls you, give it to a friend, have him lock it up, and see what happens when you want to use your phone. I'm not giving it back to you. You will eventually get over it. I am not controlled by my phone. Unfortunately, I'm weird. I'm an outlier. A lot of people always have to have their phones in their hand. When's the last time the listener went to the bathroom without having your phone? I'm 59. I remember when you couldn't do that because there were no such thing as phones. If you truly want to be unaddicted to your phone, you can if you want to. I know look at cell phones are not going away. Internet's not going away. Social media is not going away. So you've got to choose whether to invite it or not. For example, for me, one of the things I got out of a recent coaching call, and my coach didn't tell me this, it's the decision I made. I was on all the social media platforms. And after this coaching call, I said, you know what? I'm no longer going to post on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X. I am going to post on LinkedIn because that's where my audience is, on LinkedIn. And I do a video podcast. So I put the video up on YouTube. That's it. I have more followers and more engagement on LinkedIn, but I was posting everywhere everywhere else. Why? I mean, I had followers there, but I wasn't getting any leads. So I went off those networks. And first of all, the world didn't end. And I feel freer because all I have to do is worry about LinkedIn. Now, I have LinkedIn notifications turned on my phone. And I know some productivity people are going, what? Because it's important. If one of my ideal clients messages me, I want to be able to reply right away, not like 2-3 days later. So I do it very strategically. So I want people, again, little tough love, grow up, stop blaming your phone or your laptop or YouTube or Facebook and say, it's my responsibility, nobody else's.
It's interesting that you said that you focus right now on your LinkedIn profile. So for me, what comes to mind is the 80-20 rule. You put 20% of the effort to achieve 80% of results. And this principle basically can be applied to anything in life. So yes, some people think that they need to be posting and be on all the social media platforms. And I mean, we all know how many hours in a day that we all spend on social media, and that's where most of our time is spent, unfortunately. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that. Now, let me ask a couple more questions, Mark, before we wrap up. Now, when it comes to planning, how important do you think it is in terms of being productive? Do you think planning plays a role?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you start the day and you're like, what am I going to do today? Oh, I don't know. You don't have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you will fail. I want to keep my calendar open for what? You could put things on your calendar and move them around. But if you don't have something on your calendar, you'll get to the end of your day and go, what did I do today? I don't even remember. So I don't care if it's a electronic calendar, a print calendar, a notepad. Sit down, ideally at the end of your day or the morning of, and just say, what do I want to do today? And sketch it out. It's really important. Don't hope that you're going to get stuff done because you get to the end of the day and like, oh, I really meant to do this. And you didn't write it down. You forgot about it to the end of the day. It didn't get done. So gift yourself the time to plan your day.
I'm a firm believer that failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, when we talk about planning, is it something that we should be doing on a daily basis, or should we be planning a week ahead or a month ahead? What would your advice be based on your experience?
I think you should do it on a daily basis, and you can certainly plan out a week ahead. But a lot of people ask me, well, what about the weekends? Have a plan. If you're going to go to a party on Saturday night, plan. You're going to get there at 6. You're going to leave at 9. Because if you don't, you may stay till 2:00 in the morning. Have a plan. Saturday mornings for me are football Saturdays. I'm a huge, now when I say football, if you're in the States, I don't mean American football. I mean the real football. Some people call it soccer. I love football. Saturday mornings are football days for me because I like European football, and those games are on, because I'm 6 hours behind in Houston. Those games are in the morning. So Saturday mornings, I'm watching football. I do it intentionally. I'm usually not on my phone. I'm watching the game because I love football is the best sport in the world, but I do it intentionally. And I think people need to say, hey, I'm going to Disney World. Okay, so you're intentionally going to Disney World all day. Don't just say, yeah, well, of course I'm going to Disney World. No, say, I'm intentionally going to spend the day at Disney World. It makes a difference. You're doing it intentionally rather than whatever. Like my wife and I, we'll go shopping this afternoon. We're intentionally going shopping this afternoon. We're not like, well, maybe we'll go shopping. No, we're going to go shopping. If you go to church or to the mosque or whatever, you don't do it. Well, if I have time, you put it on your calendar and you go. And I think planning is important, not just for professional things. Planning is important for for personal things as well.
For a moment, when you said football, I was wondering whether you actually meant soccer, but then you clarified it just there. And since you said you're following European football, which team are you supporting at the Premier League?
My favorite team is Man City. And the reason why I chose Man City is 2 years ago, I had a friend of mine from England said, have you watched any football? I'm like, well, yeah, I watch the National Football League all the time. No, real football. I'm like, what are you talking about? So she explained to me that football in the rest of the world is called football. America's called soccer. She goes, well, why don't you watch this game? I'm like, oh man, soccer's so boring. She goes, first of all, it's called football. And she goes, give it a shot. So I sat down and watched the game. I had my phone with me only so I could text her because she was watching the same game as I am. And she goes, what'd you think? I'm like, okay, my interest is piqued. She goes, watch one more game. I watched one more game and I am so hooked on football. I don't watch any other sport. And people ask me why I picked Man City because that was her team. I didn't know any team in the Premier League. What am I going to do? Randomly pick a team? So I picked her team. Yes, I know they won 7 out of last 8 years. That's not why I picked them. I picked them because they were her team and she knew the Premier League. But I also like watching La Liga. I like Real Madrid. I like watching Bundesliga. So I can sit there and watch any football match from any country except for America, because I don't think this is real football. And I just love the sport.
Another side question, any favorite players that you've got or follow?
Well, I got to go with Holland. I mean, Holland's a goal scoring machine. And matter of fact, I got my cousin up in Rochester, New York, hooked on football. And when he started watching again, he followed Man City because that's my team, right? And he said, why isn't Holland, doing a lot? I said, Holland's got one job, score goals. That's it. That's what a striker does. Striker doesn't play defense, do throw-ins, and he kicks the ball in the net. That's his goal. And once you figure that out, you understand it. So after like 2 years, I'm on my 3rd year of football. I really understand the game. Offsides gets me frustrated. I mean, I don't think 1 millimeter of a shoelace should be offside. I think maybe 50% of the body should be offside. That's my opinion. And I'm not alone in that. I talk to other football fans. They're like, yeah, this offside, we're still all confused about offsides.
It confuses me as well at times. But yes, Erling Haaland is definitely a great player. He's on a roll at the moment, to be honest. So yeah, I think we can have another conversation on football another day. But just coming back to this conversation, Mark, would you like to wrap things up and also share your social media handles and how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the best thing to do is go to my website, MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. Sign up for my email newsletter. I have a newsletter comes out every Saturday, and I have a new podcast comes out every Monday and Thursday. So if you're not following the podcast, I send you an email to say the new podcast episode is out. Right now, I am focusing on HR professionals. So if there's any HR professionals listening, I do offer a 20-minute HR productivity discovery call. And you can get that on my website as well. But everything for me is at MrProductivity.com. I'm big on LinkedIn. Now, I'm not going to tell you to go to LinkedIn and look for Mark Struczewski because you're going to like, what? Go to MrProductivity.com, scroll to the bottom. There's a link that says LinkedIn. Will take you right to my profile.
I also see a free gift on your website. Would you like to mention something about that?
Yeah. So if you sign up for my email newsletter, you get a 5-minute training call. My gift to you.
All right. Any final thoughts, Mark, or would you like to sum up our discussion?
No, I think the one thing I want to leave people with is the magic of the power of one. So pick one thing I told you today, one thing, and go implement it. That's it. Don't overthink it. Pick one thing and go implement it.
Thanks, Mark. It was a very interesting, fascinating, useful conversation that we had. Thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate your time. And I'm sure our audience would find it useful for sure. I mean, there's no single doubt because we discussed a lot of important, useful things that can be easily implemented and actioned. So thanks, Mark. That's Mark Struczewski, called also Mr. Productivity for a reason. So thank you very much for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.